Well, hello and welcome back. We're going to discuss topic 2.2 from the College Board topic list, and that is ecosystem services. Keeping in mind that our enduring understanding, what we want to be focusing on in all of Unit 2, is that ecosystems have structure and diversity that do change over time due to both natural inputs and anthropogenic inputs. So we're going to define ecosystem services first, and then really delve into different types or the variety of ecosystem services provided. So the textbook definition, so from the Miller textbook that we are using, is that ecosystem services are natural services provided by a healthy ecosystem that support life and human economies uh, at no monetary cost to us. So things that nature does of its own accord that we benefit both as living organisms, but also we benefit from in terms of our economies. But nature does it on its own and does not require necessarily direct human inputs. Okay, so for example, some ecosystem services provided by forests will be that they purify air and water, right? They provide goods like timber and fiber. They help to maintain soil quality, and they help to regulate climate and cycle nutrients. All of these things are things that forests do just by virtue of being a forest, right? All of these things are directly beneficial to us in terms of just our overall well-being as organisms, but also benefit us in our pursuits as humans, like with our economy. Okay, um, so ecosystem services is a very broad term, and so we're going to divide them up into four main types. There are what are called supporting ecosystem services, provisioning, regulating, and cultural. And we will discuss each of those four types of ecosystem services one at a time. And we'll start with supporting. So supporting ecosystem services are services that basically support the function of all living organisms. All right. So for example, nutrient cycling. Okay. So the ability to move things like nitrogen and carbon and phosphorus into and out of our biotic and abiotic environment. That is an ecosystem services carried out by natural systems, and it's exceptionally important. And that nutrient cycling supports all living things. Right? Water cycling is another example. Okay, regenerating soil. So plants take up nutrients from the soil, like nitrogen and phosphorus and others, for example. When they die and decompose, many of those nutrients are put back into the soil. Without that regeneration of nutrients in the soil, we would deplete that soil and it would no longer be suitable for life. All right, and providing habitat. Okay, so we call these supporting ecosystem services because they are things that natural systems do to support the living systems that are a part of those natural systems. All right. Now we have what are called provisioning ecosystems services, and this is probably the most commonly referred to because this is where we actually directly utilize things that the ecosystem provides for us. All right. So some examples of provisions or provisioning ecosystem services are food. Right. We can get our food completely from natural systems. We also utilize provisioning services in agriculture, of course, by growing the food directly. Um, we have timber and fiber, like I mentioned before, we get from forests. Fuel, so we can use wood and wood fiber and wood products for fuel for heating our homes um, or cooking, right? Um, we also get fresh water, a very important resource, okay? And medicines, so we can extract certain compounds from plants, especially to produce medicines. All of these are provisions that we can utilize for direct human benefit that are provided just naturally in our ecosystems. We have what are called regulating ecosystem services. Um, and so ecosystems help to regulate our environment to make it more livable and robust. All right. So pollination, for example, there are natural pollinators like bees and butterflies uh, that help to regulate our environment. Especially useful even in our agricultural fields. So even though agriculture is not a natural system, we do rely heavily on pollination to help our agriculture along. Natural systems purify our water for us. So particularly our wetlands, like we talked about in the biomes unit. Um, so well, water is very easily polluted or picks up pollutants very easily because it's very good at dissolving things, but nature has a way of purifying that water for us, right? Um, Nature is good at helping to regulate climate. So forests, for example, don't just absorb carbon dioxide and release oxygen. Provide it. Forests actually put a lot of moisture back into the air, and so deforestation, for example, can actually lead to a decrease in precipitation, um, which could lead to even more loss of forest, right? So we have a positive feedback that can occur there. All right. So all of these examples are examples of ecosystems regulating our natural system to make it more livable. Breaking down waste is hugely important. So bacteria and fungus, having an abundance of those helps wastes break down and helps that nutrient cycling process. Now, last, and it's probably the least in terms of just like directly beneficial, and probably the most often overlooked are our cultural ecosystem services. So nature and natural systems have cultural, religious, and or spiritual value that's sort of intrinsic. So, for example, many people enjoy just outdoor recreation, going out into nature and experiencing nature through hiking, climbing, or just fishing and hunting even, right? There is cultural or intrinsic value in the having natural systems in place and intact so that we can enjoy them just purely for recreation. There's aesthetic value. So just the raw natural beauty of our natural systems adds value to our life. Okay. And then, of course, many religions, but spiritually speaking, just in general, lots of people um, enjoy nature because it and communing with nature for a variety of reasons. And almost every religion has some sort of communing with nature as a part of it. So it has some religious and spiritual significance. Not to mention that there's a lot of mental health and physical health benefits to experiencing nature in the outdoors. There's all kinds of medical studies showing everything from an increase in serotonin in your brain to a decrease in blood pressure and other stress-related illnesses, just simply by spending as little as 72 hours in the outdoors. Um, so all kinds of cultural and recreational and an aesthetic impacts and important virtues in nature. All right, so that is our four main classes of ecosystem services. And taking us back to that idea that nature could probably exist pretty well without us, but we certainly cannot exist without maintaining all of those ecosystem services that are provided by natural systems at no cost to us. These are things that systems do by virtue of being what they are, that we directly benefit from, uh, either through provisioning or through regulating or from supporting services, or that we benefit from more culturally or spiritually through those cultural ecosystem services. So we're going to close this note session off talking about anthropogenic impact. So, there's a lot of give and take in nature in terms of how we treat it, right? Do we treat it purely as a provisioning resource, for example, in which case the philosophy would be is nature is there for us to extract what we need and use. Um, but we have to also understand that if we treat nature entirely as a provisioning resource, right, there is a chance that we would degrade that environment, all right, and that the consequences of degrading that environment not only reduce the availability of those provisioning resources, but it also reduces all those other ecosystem services that are vitally vitally important to us, not just in terms of cultural and aesthetic things, but if we reduce those supporting ecosystem services or those regulating ecosystem services as well, we're going to find ourselves in a world of trouble. All right, so one of the things I want you to think about is if we continue to log or continue to cause deforestation, um, what ecosystem services might we be sacrificing if we continue this process, particularly, and most particularly, I should say, in the tropical rainforest regions? All right, I am going to sign us off at this point, and I will see you guys next time.